4 million households are about to see big changes to universal credit from April 2026. Some people will get a lot more money, while others are going to face a massive cut. So the government calls this rebalancing, but what does it actually mean for you? So in this video, we're going to cover 5 important topics that affect millions. First, the £725 boost and who actually gets the extra money each year. Second, the health element cut and exactly how much people are going to lose. Third, the protected groups and who is completely safe from these cuts. Fourth, the timeline showing when each of the changes is going to come into force. And fifth, what you need to do right now to protect yourself. So my name's Zach Hussain and I'm the founder of financeeducation.co.uk and I've got 25 years experience of helping people with their finances. Right, so let's start with the good news for most people on universal credit. The standard allowance is going up by £725 a year for 2029. That's the basic amount everyone gets before any top-ups are added on. Currently, if you're single and over 25, you get £400 a month as standard. By 2029, that jumps to about £460 a month, which is £14 extra each week. That's the biggest real terms increase to the main rate since 1980. So around 4 million households will benefit from this rise, and it is of course above inflation. So that means you're actually getting more spending power, not just keeping pace with prices. The increases roll out gradually every year from April 29 until 2029. But here's the critical bit about who actually wins from this change. This £725 boost applies to everyone on the standard allowance with one exception. So if you're getting the health top-up, well then you've got a completely different story. Now this is where it gets really harsh for some people on universal credit. Well, I think so anyway. And that's like the extra payment called the health element, or the LCWRA in official speak. You get this if you can't work because of sickness or disability. So right now, that health top-up is £97 a week on top of the standard allowance. But from April 2026, new claimants can only get £50 a week instead of £97. So that's a cut of £47 every single week, or £2,400 a year. And by 2029, new health claimants will be £2,700 a year worse off than protected. So the government expects about 750,000 people to be on this lower rate by 2029. So these are people with serious health conditions who generally can't work full time. The official reason is the health top-up was creating bad incentives apparently. So they reckon people were claiming it instead of trying to get back to it. But many disabled people say this is just cutting support when they need it most. But not everyone with health conditions gets hit by these cuts, though there are protections. So if you're already getting the health element before April 2026, you're completely protected. Your £97 a week stays at £97, although it's frozen until 2029. Around 2.17 million existing claimants keep the high rate under this protection rule. So if you claim the health element now, you lock it in at £97. This is really important timing, which we'll get into in a minute. There are 2 other protected groups who get the full £97 even after 2026. First is anyone with a terminal illness under the special rules for end of life. Second is people with severe lifelong conditions who will never be able to work. That severe conditions group also never has to be reassessed, which is huge. But you have to meet very strict criteria, like constantly unable to do basic activities. So if your condition only affects you most of the time, not constantly, it's unlikely that you're going to qualify. So on this slide, I'm going to map out exactly when these changes affect you based on your situation. So April 2026 is the big date when everything kicks off for different groups. So if you're on standard universal credit with no elements, you start winning immediately. Your standard allowance goes up by 2.3% above inflation in April 2026. Then it rises more each year, 3.1% in 2027, then 4% in 2028. And 4% again in 2029. So by the end, you've gained that full £725 a year compared to where you are now. But if you claim in the health element for the first time after April 2026, you lose. From day one, you only get £50 a week, not £97 a week anymore. And that £50 stays frozen right through to 2029 with no inflation increases. So anybody already on the health element before April 2026 stays on £97 weekly, but your £97 also gets frozen, so you lose out to inflation over those years. So the timeline basically rewards people who claim earlier and punishes people who claim later. So that's really important to remember. So the key thing is obviously, what do you actually need to do now based on all these changes coming in? Well, firstly, if you have a health condition and you think you might qualify for the LCWRA claim, well, claim that now. Getting in before April 26 locks you into the higher £97 rate permanently. Don't wait around hoping your condition improves if you're generally struggling to work. The deadline pressure here is really real because you're talking about just under £2,500 a year different. It's a huge sum of money. Citizens' advice and benefits and work both say apply as soon as possible. Second, if you're already on the health element, you don't need to do anything. Your rate is protected automatically. You won't suddenly drop to the lower amount. Just be aware though, your payments won't rise with inflation for the next 4 years. Third, if you're on the standard universal credit with no health element, you just wait. Your payments automatically increase from April 2026 onwards with no action needed from you. The rises happen through your normal monthly assessment period, so you'll just start to see it gradually. Fourth, understand the severe conditions criteria if you have a lifelong serious condition. Getting marked as severe condition means full rate plus no future reassessments for universal credit. What I'd recommend you do is check the Benefits and Work website for detailed guidance on what qualifies as severe. And lastly, don't panic. If you're confused about where you stand with these changes, contact Citizens Advice or a benefits advisor who can look at your specific situation. They can tell you if you should claim now or if you're likely to be already protected. But let's be clear about what these numbers actually mean for people day to day. So someone on standard universal credit getting that £725 boost gains £14 a week. That's helpful, sure, but it's clearly not life-changing money for most households, quite honestly. Now compare that to someone losing £47 a week on the health element cut. That's 3 times bigger than the gain, and it hits people with serious disabilities. So you're talking about losing nearly £200 a month when you already can't work. The government says this rebalancing makes the system fairer and encourages people to go to work. But disability charities says it punishes disabled people into hardship and poverty. So if you think about it, you're cutting support from people who generally cannot do full-time work. And here's the thing that really winds people up about this whole reform. The protected group with severe conditions only gets protected if they're constantly unable. So if your condition affects you most of the time, but not constantly, you're going to get the lower rate, I'm afraid. So someone with a degenerative disease that's getting worse over time, or they're going to get shafted, quite frankly. They only qualify for full protection once they're completely unable to function all of the time. And until then, they're stuck on half the payment, even though they'll never work again. The timeline is also brutal for anyone who develops a condition after April 2026. They get less money than someone who gets sick a month earlier through pure timing. And this creates a really weird unfairness based on when your health collapses, not how serious it is. Right, so after hearing all this, what should you actually be thinking about in your situation? First question, do I have a health condition that stops me working full time right now? If yes, have you claimed the health element yet? Or are you just on standard? Second question, if you haven't claimed yet, can you get that claim in before April 2026? That deadline is really important because it's the difference between £50 and £97 a week. Don't assume you'll fail the assessment. If you're genuinely struggling, get professional advice and support first. Third question, if you're already on the health element, do you meet the severe conditions criteria? This matters for avoiding future reassessments, might matter more if the rules tighten further. Check what conditions qualify and whether your situation fits those strict constant inability tests. Fourth question, are you on standard universal credit, expecting these rises to solve money problems? Remember, £14 a week is helpful, but it's not going to transform your financial situation. Don't rely on this as your main strategy for getting out of difficult money situations. And fifth question, do you understand what protection actually means for your payment? Protected doesn't mean rising with inflation, it just means not getting cut to £50. Your £97 stays at £97, but loses value every year as prices go up around you. So let's wrap this up with the key points you need to remember about these changes. 4 million households get a £725 boost and standard universal credit by 2029, but 750,000 people with health conditions face cuts of £2,400 a year or more. The big dividing line is April 2026, which determines if you get protected or not. Claim the health element before that date and you're looking at £97 a week forever. Claim after that date and you only get £50 a week with no inflation rises. Protected groups, including existing claimants, terminal illness and severe lifelong conditions meeting strict criteria. But protected just means frozen, not rising. It's protection from cuts, not from inflation. The winners are people on standard allowance, The losers are new health claimants after April 2026. So if you might qualify for the health element, don't wait around to claim before April 2026. That's the single most important action you can take to protect yourselves financially. So if you're confused, get some help and support from Citizens Advice or any sort of similar organisation. See, these changes represent the biggest shake-up to universal credit since it started rolling out. Some people win, some people lose, but understanding which group you're in is absolutely critical. So make sure you know where you stand before these deadlines hit next April. Goodbye and good luck.